Luke Eastwood, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Great to have you on. I heard about you when I watched your interview with Denny Henderson, that fascinating contactee lady who was one of many fascinating people at that Orlando conference that made lots of things on planet Earth wake up more. I hope to think we caused to create disturbance in the force at that conference. I was there, and I made my presence felt as best I could, and Danny sure did, and everyone did, and Alex Collier was the man of the hour, of course, regarding that. But this is about you first, Luke Eastwood. Since I have you as a guest on my show, I would like to ask you to expand on who you are from a primary source perspective. What have you experienced? What did you do in your life that caused you to the stuff you do? What have you learned? Where are you planning to go from here? Be the best primary source you can. And I don't have Alex Jones-itis. I don't interrupt my guests, so you are free to talk all you want. I will not interrupt you.
Well, thanks, Andrew, for having me on, first of all. And yeah, that was interesting. So yeah, that's great you picked up from that, that interview, which I was very glad to do. But yeah, your question. Ooh, well, that's a lot to unpack there. But I suppose I got to a certain age and I started to question a lot of things. Uh, I watched a video earlier which was like glitches in the Matrix, and I was thinking, yeah, I thought at sort of like probably around 12, I thought, hey, you know, life is supposed to go this way, but my life doesn't feel like it's fitting exactly right. It's like I feel like I'm a glitch in the Matrix, or I'm experiencing glitches. You know how some people sail through life and everything's just perfect. They go to school, they have no problems, everybody loves them, they get great qualifications, they get a great job, they meet the perfect partner, and everything just sort of seems to dovetail. And they never question anything because everything's just so perfect for them. My life hasn't been like that at all. Um, I wonder, when I was about 10, my parents split up and they got divorced. And I'm wondering if that is what kind of popped my bubble and started me to question about, this is the world that is presented to us. And, this is the world that I see and feel around me. And the two don't seem to kind of match up. And I began asking questions of, I suppose, my parents and other people. And a lot of the time, they didn't really have any answers to give me, or, I wasn't happy with the answers. And you could say the same is true with spirituality. I was, going to a Catholic school, and going to mass. And I suppose my late teens, I started to think, well, I'm not really sure if this is what I believe. And then I thought, well, what do I believe? So I started kind of trying to look for myself about, what spirituality really means, what life means, what am I here for? What is the purpose of my life? Because, I came to the conclusion I'm not here to consume and just buy stuff. There's something more to life, than that. It has to be, otherwise it's utterly pointless, uh, from a purely practical point of view. If we all just live to buy more and more crap, then we're all doomed anyway, because you can't just sustain a planet endlessly using the resources and just buying more shit for no reason. It doesn't make any sense. You're eventually going to run out of space, run out of resources. So I thought that what is life actually really meant to be about? What is our purpose? I don't believe it's all random. So I kind of looked into that a lot, and I've found myself questioning a lot of things that we're taught by the sort of system, if you like, that we grow up in. And I suppose what part of what I'm doing now is, I suppose, trying to provoke people to question for themselves, not to just accept all the official narratives from the government, from religious organizations, from companies, from anybody that's just spewing a line of narrative that doesn't necessarily make sense or seem to hold true. I think a lot of what people might feel instinctively is not right, or there's something fishy about it. There's a reason for that, and that's quite often because we are fed a load of crapola by the powers that be. So I suppose what I want more than anything else is to encourage people to think for themselves and work out for themselves what they think reality is and what life is about.
Very, very good introduction there, and I hope my little smoking session there will provide a nice little incense clearing. Folks, there's nothing wrong with smoking tobacco during radio shows. It helps purify everything. It works like incense. In fact, the Mapacho tobacco that I got fresh out of the Amazon rainforest, it actually comes packaged labeled Amazonian incense. They use it as incense, and whenever it's smoking on these radio shows, it helps us speak in 2 dimensions to wake up the sheeple, if you know what I mean. So with that being said, the word on the street, well, the word on your website is druid. And I got to ask you, what exactly does the word druid mean? I mean, yes, David Icke, he's a conspiracy and everything. He'll probably try to find some way to show that the Druids are an Illuminati bloodline. And then I'm sure there's people who will say that the Druids are just good people that have been infiltrated, much like the Freemasons in America. So what is a Druid? Please elaborate.
Okay, well, there's 2 things there. There's the ancient Druids from prehistory and the early historical period, and then there's the modern Druid, which I'm a neo Druid or a modern Druid. So they're 2 very different things, because without a time machine, you can't really go back and see exactly what they did. So I suppose the modern Druid movement is inspired by the original Druids. But having said that, you did have a Druid revival starting in the 1700s, which is very much connected with Freemasonry. I'm not a fan of Freemasonry at all. And, I would link it very much with corruption. You see guys that are up in court and, there's a secret signal. The judge is a Freemason. The guy up in the dock is a Freemason. Maybe the lawyer is too. And, they all conspire together to, get the guy off, because they have this kind of thing where they have to help each other. And, Freemasonry has nothing to do with the original Druids at all. It's a completely different tradition. And they somehow kind of started the Druid revival in a sort of very romantic way that was very different from the original kind of Druids you'd find in Ireland or in Britain or Gaul or ancient France. And then over time, it's changed. It has begun to change in the last, I suppose, the last 50, 60 years, really, where it's tried, there's been serious efforts to move back to the original sort of Druid roots, if you like, and get away from the kind of Freemason and romantic ideas about it. So, I mean, Druidism or Druidry is a kind of, it's a pagan religion. It's a neo-pagan religion, kind of based around nature. So I suppose a Druid is someone who is a sort of a spiritual or magical practitioner, very much steeped in Celtic tradition and in nature in a nutshell. I mean, you know, it's one of those things you could, yeah, that's a short answer. You could spend 2 hours answering that if you wanted to.
Well, when it comes to the magical forest, I think I may have just been victimized. I actually am missing an Aries pinky ring. I was meditating before the show out in nature. And I'm wondering if maybe it was a druid or some spiritual entity that took my ring. I looked all over the spot that I meditated, and there was no gold ring to be found. Hopefully, this is just another one of those cases of my kleptocratic spirit guides taking something from me and give it back to me. That's an interesting story.
Well, that could happen. I have a story a bit like that.
Yeah, by all means, tell.
I've got I have a pentacle. You know, that's a very much misunderstood symbol, and many people associate it with Satanism. And you know, the upside down one would be. But anyway, I had the silver pentacle, and I lost it. And I was like, where the hell is it? It's just vanished. I left it outside the full moon, in the moonlight, deliberately, and it was then gone. So what the hell happened to it? About, I think it was a year or two later, I had a bonfire, and I collected up wood, and I'd cut some hedges and what have you, made this big bonfire. Then I think it was the following morning after the bonfire, was raking for the ashes, and lo and behold, there it was. And what was really strange about it was it had a dent, and to this day it has a dent in the side of it where it's flattened out. So I think what had happened, something like a crow or a magpie had stolen it, you know, a nice shiny object. It had probably ended up in a tree or the hedge, and probably when I cut it, it fell down along with the wood. Maybe that's when it got dented. Ended up in the fire, survived the fire, and didn't actually melt, even though it was completely blackened. I cleaned it all up again, and I still have it now. I just couldn't believe it. It was so incredible how this object was lost and came back to me all this time later in such a bizarre way.
Well, our spirit guides and angels are playing with us in all sorts of crazy ways. It's a crazy world out there, and there seems to be some disappearing object phenomenon going on, but I digress. There's more important things that we are worth talking about in this show, and I see you have a lot of things to say about folk tales. Well, okay, the term folk tale, it is said that mythology and legends are believed to be true by those who talk about them, but folk tales are believed to be fictional by the people that tell them. That's not me talking, that's Wikipedia talking, but you don't know what Wikipedia, sometimes it's a reliable source if it cites the sources properly, sometimes it's edited for the wrong reasons. So you get my drift. These Dingle folk tales and Kerry folk tales, you got a lot of things going with folk tales here. Are they fiction, or is there truth to it?
Well, I think most of these stories are actually kind of based on some kind of truth at some point. With those books, there's some modern stories, but in many cases, you know, I got the stories from talking to people. So you get a version of the story. If you talk to a guy down the road, they'd have a slightly different version. And of course, anything that's given in an oral way, an oral tradition, every time you tell it, it's going to be a little bit different. So I would say a lot of the really old stories going back, well, we've no way of actually knowing how they originally were. You just kind of have to trust that they've come down to us sort of fairly intact, hopefully. But, you know, I think a lot of mythology has an element of truth in it. People have dismissed, like the flood, you know, which you find all across the world, not just in the, you know, the Jewish and Christian Bible. You find that story all over the world. I'd say that actually is a story that's based in truth, not in you know, fiction. Okay, there's different versions and they've been kind of fictionalized, if you like, because people didn't know the exact details. But uh, I would say an awful lot of mythological and folk stories are actually coming from something that was real, or at least originally was real.
All right, you broke up a little bit there, but I think I got the best of the gist of the info that there is some truth to folktales. Even fiction has some truth to it. And of course, we can get into the whole story about Star Wars being under the guise of fiction, the Orion Wars and all. I'm actually in the process of watching the 9-part trilogy. I just watched The Phantom Menace a few days ago, and over the course of the next year and a half or so, maybe I'll watch the rest of the episodes and it'll all play out on planet Earth, I'm sure. So anyway, regarding things playing out on planet Earth, your recent interview with Danny Henderson, Politics, Current Plans, and Your Planet Now, well, politics is one of those things. It's really addictive, and I am sorry, people, if you don't really like me getting into this, but it I don't preach to the choir, but the world is not run by the politicians. The world is run by the bankers, who are in turn run by a spiritual hierarchy of malevolent forces, and it has been told to us now that the overlords are gone. That the overlords, so the minions, don't really have the luxury of going to the overlords to ask for help in the event that the white hats can defeat them. But what do you have to say about the current state of affairs regarding how much the system of domination and control has been taken down, and how what the weak links in humanity's chains are to enable this waking up process to happen sooner rather than later?
Well, listening to a couple of things you said there, you know, the first thing you said about the politicians, well, I totally agree. It's all theater. They're actors. They're not really in control of anything. They are the public face of the machine. So they create this theater of, you know, it's like a fake boxing match or a fake wrestling match, you know, where it's pretty much made up. They're not really making any decisions. I'd agree that the real people who are making the decisions in every government are behind the scenes, you know, and the politicians that we see on TV, etc. They're just the, you know, they're the front of house guy or woman, you know, and there's a lot of people who are sort of entrenched in a permanent way within different governments around the world. You know, they're making decisions, but they don't get voted in or out every 4 or 5 years. They're there. And one of the problems as well is all these people are beholden to corporate interests and sort of powerful people in the shadows, you know. It's a big problem all over the world. And I think a lot of people are realizing now that these people who, you know, are so-called politicians, you know, they're just the front people. I think a lot of people have actually woken up to that fact. And I think there's a massive awareness now that there wasn't before of the level of corruption that's happening throughout the political systems, where you've got all these lobbyists in America, you've got them in Europe. I think, you know, there are probably hardly enough countries to count on your hand that don't have a major problem with corruption and lobbying, you know. So I think that is part of the awakening, an awareness that we live in a rotten system where, you know, if you vote left or you vote right, blue or red, it doesn't matter, because it's just a game. It's just a stupid distraction from the fact that the people behind all this are just going to do what they want to do, and they have no interest in the needs or desires of 99% of people on this planet. You know, I think there is an awakening to that fact that this planet is run by people who do not give a shit about the bulk of humanity. The thing is now, having made that leap and reached this kind of moment of awareness about how things really are, the question is, what do we do about it? How do we change this paradigm into something that's better?
Yeah, I'd like to change it into something better too. By the way, hopefully it won't happen during this interview, but I've had problems recently with my computer self-restarting to prevent overheating. Hopefully that will not happen in this interview, but if you see me disappear, that may be the cause of it. So let's hope for the best and hope that that does not happen. Regarding the upcoming near future, though, there are definitely some chaotic things that have to be playing out, you would think, in the next couple of years, considering that 2023, you got Pluto going into Aquarius and then back into Capricorn and then back into Aquarius and then back into Capricorn. And I think I'm actually going to Aquarius and Capricorn, that whole thing in the end of 2024. I don't know if I'm right on that, but that and also the eclipse, the solar eclipse that's going to crisscross America from the southwest to the northeast on April 8th, 2024. Day after my 38th birthday, I'll be traveling by train to Carbondale, Illinois, the crisscross point of that eclipse and the one that happened in 2017, August. And that eclipse is supposed to signal the end of the Roman Empire of the modern era, that is the United States of America. Well, that's what people are saying. That's what I've heard it said as. And the eclipse that started the whole thing basically in 2017, that was like, we had basically been going into a new American Revolution / Civil War over since 2017. This country has, regarding its division and like right versus left. And can the same thing be said of all the other countries in the world that have two-party systems? And if that is the case, then what's the best way to resolve harmony in this time? If that's the best question I can give.
Well, I think the worst thing that can happen is civil wars and conflict. But you look at I call them the controllers. They're stoking it up. They want to see conflict. They want the left and the right to hate each other. And that's happening in Europe, certainly. I can't talk about the whole world, but certainly across Europe, you've got an increased level of tension between people on the left and the right in politics. And on all different areas, you know, you look at the whole kind of woke culture. It's like, you know, men and women hating each other, black and white people hating each other, and all these kind of this antipathy being generated and encouraged. And it's all part of their game. I think if we can step out of that game and not be played, because they're playing both sides and they're just encouraging us. It's this old divide and conquer ruse. It's been going for millions, well, thousands of years rather. You know, if you want to defeat two groups of people, you set them against each other and you come in and clear up afterwards. That's what the Romans like to do. And that's the same tactic they're employing against the ordinary people of the world, all the plebs, or plebiscite as they give it the proper name. You know, all us people who aren't part of the elites, we're just cannon fodder and serfs really to them. And I think they want to usher in a new age of sort of neo-serfdom, techno-serfdom. But really they need compliance. They need us to continue fighting each other instead of realizing that ordinary people around us are not the enemy. The enemy is these people who are creating these divisions deliberately, that are deliberately sowing discord to distract you from the fact that the whole planet, the whole humanity is being pillaged by a very small number of people who only have their own self-interest at heart and care nothing for the future of humanity. You know, in many ways, it's a spiritual war, and you know, these people are well aware of what they're doing, and a lot of people would suggest that they, you know, they have a satanic agenda on a spiritual level, and you know, they actually want to co-opt and destroy and subvert humanity so that we end up in this awful transhumanist future where everything is upside down and they have complete and utter control of everything through implementing sort of digital prisons for us and through rolling out of AI and robotics across the world, so that you know, we'll either be redundant or will be completely controlled by their mechanisms that they're trying to put in place at the moment.
Right. By the way, I just got a pop-up saying that my Zoom meeting will be ending in 10 minutes. I think that may be one of the unfortunate flaws of not having upgraded to a higher level, so might as well spend the next I'm gonna make this whole interview free for everybody. Another reason I prefer to do Skype instead of Zoom is because I guess, well, it's easier to edit those videos. But I'll make this interview is free for everybody because I was only given 40 minutes of radio time to be allowed to do. So let's cover a couple very serious subjects on the fly here. Well, regarding plans for the planet now, the love energy of the Earth is supposed to keep increasing and increasing and increasing. And what that raises the question, is it really in our best interest to try to bring to light all the negative stuff in order to get all of the weak links in humanity's chain out of the way? But if love is constantly rising, then maybe we should forget about that kind of stuff and instead focus on love all the time. And maybe the New Age people did have it right, or then again, maybe they aren't right, because, well, there's better ways to wake up humanity than meditate in a creek for 8 hours a day. I mean, feels great, but it's not gonna wake a lot of people up.
Well, that's a difficult one. I think in a way both are right. You know, you need to shine a light in dark places to show people what's actually happening, but you know, at the same time, you don't want to be dragged into negativity and negative reactions. You know, too much staring into the abyss can actually be totally destructive. So, I mean, while we need to be aware of what's being and what's going on, people need to be educated. I think overall, you know, you have to overcome this negativity, and like you say, through love. And I think, you know, we have to have compassion for each other. That they're trying to create is through empathy and compassion and love for our fellow human beings. You know, that's how, you know, you avoid ending up in a civil war. All this hatred that they're engendering is designed to create the conflict. So if we don't buy into that invitation and try to rise above it, I think, you know, it's possible that, you know, we will avoid these kind of bloodbaths which just end up with another cycle of violence again. You know, you look at revolutions in France and in Russia, you know, that didn't pan out too well. The same with China, you know, all this violence, millions of people died. And what did you end up with? After all that, you ended up with a system which is corrupted again. So I think, you know, we have to try a different way, something that's non-violent. I think we have to resist. We have to be strong. You know, I don't think all this sort of airy-fairy stuff is going to save us, but I do think that we do have to reach for our higher selves, try to ascend in our consciousness rather than descend into violence and aggression. I don't think in a straight up fight with these guys, we're going to lose. We have to be clever in that. I think we have to put them in a position where the whole planet is refusing to comply with what they want us to do. If we have the awareness to stand up and say no en masse, what can they do? There's very limited options for them. So I think that's how they will be defeated. I think it's a combination of raising awareness about what they're doing